October 23rd, 1943. 4:47 a.m. Rue de la République, Lille, northern France. Marcel Fourier crouched in a doorway, watching 4 German soldiers on patrol 50 meters away. His hands were steady. His breathing was controlled. He held a weapon that looked like plumbing salvage. 3 pieces of steel pipe held together with wire and welds. No stock, no sights, no trigger guard. Just metal tube and crude firing mechanism. It weighed maybe 1 kilogram. Length, 40 centimeters. It looked like something pulled from a factory trash bin, which was essentially accurate. The Germans walked closer. 4 Wehrmacht soldiers, 2 with MP-40 submachine guns, 2 with Kar 98K rifles, combat experienced, alert but not expecting trouble. Lille had been quiet for 6 weeks. Fourier had 8 rounds of stolen 9mm ammunition loaded in his pipe weapon. He'd built the weapon 4 days ago in his factory workshop. Used scrap metal and plumbing supplies. Took him 3 hours 40 minutes to construct. He'd never killed anyone before. Never fired a weapon in combat. He was a machinist. 42 years old. Spent 20 years operating lathes and milling machines. Made textile equipment before the war, made Wehrmacht uniform buttons now. The Germans trusted him because he kept their machines running, never caused problems, never missed work. They had no idea he was about to test whether trash could kill trained soldiers. The Germans were 30 meters away now. Fourier waited. Let them come closer. 20 meters, 15 meters. His finger rested on the crude trigger lever. 10 meters. He could see their faces now. Young men, maybe 20 years old. One was laughing about something, talking to his squad mate. 5 meters. Time to find out if desperation could beat engineering. September 1943. Northern France had been bleeding under German occupation for 2 years. 18 months of ambushes, raids, assassinations. The French resistance had been fighting hard, fighting desperately. But they had a problem that was killing fighters faster than they could recruit them. Weapons. French resistance cells operated with whatever firearms they could steal, smuggle, or capture. Most fighters had nothing. No rifles, no pistols, no grenades. They faced German patrols armed with MP-40 submachine guns, 32-round magazines, 500 rounds per minute cyclic rate. Effective range, 200 meters. The Germans also carried MG-42 machine guns, 1,200 rounds per minute. Effective range, 800 meters. Belt-fed. Devastating. The resistance faced this with kitchen knives, hunting rifles, maybe a few captured weapons with no spare ammunition. The mathematics were brutal and simple. For every German soldier killed, the resistance lost 4 fighters. 4-to-1 casualty ratio, completely unsustainable. Northern France had approximately 300 active resistance cells. Conservative estimate 2,000 fighters. Total firearms between them, maybe 300. Do the mathematics. 2,000 fighters, 300 weapons. That meant 1,700 fighters operated with knives, clubs, improvised weapons against trained German infantry with machine guns. British SOE provided some support. Airdrops when weather permitted. Maybe 1 drop per month. Each drop supplied perhaps 30 fighters with Sten guns. 30 weapons per month for 2,000 fighters. The supply couldn't meet demand. Wouldn't ever meet demand. Meanwhile, fighters died. 4 dead for every German killed. The numbers didn't work. Everyone knew it. Resistance commanders knew it. British handlers knew it. The fighters themselves knew it. But nobody had a solution. The Germans understood the weapon problem perfectly. They'd designed their occupation strategy around it. Controlled every avenue of weapon supply. Every gunsmith in northern France was registered, monitored, or arrested. Every ammunition factory operated under Wehrmacht control. Armed guards, inventory checks, production records audited daily. Every weapons depot was guarded by full platoons. Perimeter defenses, regular patrols, access restricted to German personnel only. The penalty for weapon manufacture was public execution. Town square hangings, bodies left on display for 3 days. The message was clear and brutally consistent. July 19th, 43. 3 men hanged in Lille. Their crime: possession of rifle-making equipment, lathes and milling machines in a basement workshop. Germans discovered them during a routine search, arrested them at dawn. Trial lasted 40 minutes. Execution by noon. Bodies displayed in Place du Général de Gaulle. August 4th. 2 men executed in Roubaix. They'd attempted to smuggle Sten gun parts from a British airdrop. German checkpoint found the parts hidden in a vegetable cart. Both men shot on sight. No trial. Their bodies dumped in the street as warning. September 12th. 1 man executed for stealing ammunition from a German supply truck. He'd managed to take 2 boxes of 9mm rounds, 48 rounds total. Germans caught him 3 blocks away, hanged him that afternoon. The mathematics of terror were simple. Execute publicly, display the bodies, make the cost of resistance visible, make it personal. Make people understand that weapons meant death. No weapons meant no effective resistance. No effective resistance meant German control remained absolute. The system worked. By September 43, almost no one in northern France attempted weapons manufacture. The risk was too high, the penalty too certain. Better to fight with knives, better to accept 4-to-1 casualties, better to die slowly than hang in a town square. Resistance operations without proper weapons followed predictable patterns. Close quarters ambushes using knives, clubs, garrots. Success rate, approximately 30%. Casualty rate, 70%. The mathematics destroyed every cell that tried it. Example, August 27th, 43. Resistance cell near Roubaix ambushed a German patrol. 8 fighters with knives attacked 4 Germans on evening patrol. The attack succeeded in killing 2 Germans. Both caught by surprise. Both stabbed before they could raise weapons. But the other 2 Germans responded with trained efficiency. MP40 fire at point-blank range. Sustained bursts. 5 resistance fighters died in 12 seconds. The remaining 3 fled. Escaped with 2 captured MP40s and approximately 60 rounds of ammunition. Those 2 MP40s armed the entire cell. 8 fighters, 2 weapons. They rationed ammunition carefully, used the weapons only for critical operations. The 60 rounds lasted 1 week. 7 days of operations. Then ammunition gone. Back to knives, back to 70% casualties, back to watching friends die. The cycle repeated across northern France. Successful ambush yields captured weapons. Weapons used until ammunition exhausted. Back to knives. Back to casualties. Every resistance commander understood the pattern. Every fighter lived it. British SOE handlers read the reports, saw the casualty figures, sent more airdrops when possible. But airdrops couldn't solve the fundamental problem. Supply couldn't match demand. 2,000 fighters needed 2,000 weapons. Britain couldn't provide that. Couldn't even come close. The resistance needed a different solution. Needed weapons that didn't depend on British supply chains. Needed firearms that could be manufactured locally, secretly, continuously. But German occupation had eliminated that possibility. Eliminated every gunsmith, controlled every factory, monitored every machine shop. The situation appeared hopeless. The mathematics appeared unsolvable. 2,000 fighters, 300 weapons, 4-to-1 casualties. German executions for weapon manufacture. No solution existed within conventional parameters. The solution would come from an unexpected source. Not from British intelligence officers planning supply drops. Not from experienced gunsmiths with decades of firearms knowledge. Not from military engineers with technical training. The solution would come from a 42-year-old machinist named Marcel Fourier, a man who maintained the machines that made uniform buttons for the Wehrmacht, a man who'd never fired a gun in combat, never designed a weapon, never studied firearms engineering. But he'd spent 20 years operating lathes and milling machines in a textile factory. 20 years making precise metal parts. 20 years understanding how metal moved, how tolerances worked, how components fit together. He was about to prove something that would change resistance warfare across northern France. You don't need a gun factory to arm a resistance movement. You don't need gunsmiths or engineering teams or sophisticated manufacturing equipment. You just need a lathe, some scrap metal, and the willingness to reduce firearms to their absolute mechanical minimum. Strip away everything except the components that make bullets go forward. Barrel, chamber, firing pin, spring. Nothing else matters. Not sights, not stocks, not trigger guards, not rifling, not reliability beyond 50 rounds, not accuracy beyond 10 meters. Strip away everything sophisticated, everything over-engineered, everything unnecessary for point-blank ambush warfare. Build weapons from trash, from plumbing supplies, from materials found in any hardware store. Accept that crude functionality beats sophisticated unavailability. Accept that disposable beats irreplaceable. Accept that 50 rounds of terrible accuracy beats 0 rounds of perfect accuracy. Marcel Fourier was about to prove that innovation doesn't require genius. Sometimes innovation just requires desperation and a willingness to discard everything conventional wisdom says is essential. Sometimes the best weapon isn't the most sophisticated weapon. Sometimes the best weapon is the one that actually exists. Marcel Fourier was born in Lille in 1901, 42 years old in September 1943. Spent his entire life within 20 kilometers of where he was born. Started working at Textile Industrielle du Nord in 1917. Age 16. World War I still grinding through trenches 50 kilometers away. Fourier learned machining while German artillery shook the factory windows. The work was precise, demanding. Textile machinery required tight tolerances, gears that meshed perfectly, spindles that rotated without wobble, drive shafts balanced to thousandths of an inch. Any imprecision meant broken machinery. Broken machinery meant production stopped. Production stopped meant workers got fired. Fourier learned fast, learned that precision wasn't optional, learned that measurements mattered, learned to read metal by touch. Could feel when a part was 3/1000ths oversize. Could hear when a gear wasn't meshing correctly. 20 years operating lathes, milling machines, drill presses. 20 years making components that had to fit perfectly or fail completely. He specialized in precision work, made gears for textile looms, spindles for spinning machines, bearing assemblies that had to rotate 10,000 times per day without failure. The work was repetitive but satisfying, made something real, something functional, something that mattered. Married Marie Deschamps in 1923. 3 children, Pierre, born 24, Jean, born 27, Sophie, born 30. Good life, stable work, decent pay, small house near the factory. Life followed predictable patterns. Work, home, family, Sundays at church, summer weeks at the coast. Normal life in a normal French city. Then 1940 happened. Germans invaded France in May, reached Lille by June. The Wehrmacht rolled into the city with tanks and trucks and soldiers. Established occupation immediately. Posted notices, established curfews, took control of factories. Textile Industrielle du Nord got repurposed within 2 weeks. No more textile machinery production. New orders, manufacture uniform components for Wehrmacht. Buttons, belt buckles, mess kit handles, small metal parts for military uniforms. The factory machines could handle it. Lathes and mills didn't care what they made. Metal was metal. German officers arrived with production specifications, showed Fourier and other machinists the technical drawings, explained daily quotas, made expectations clear, meet quotas or face consequences. Fourier needed the job, needed to feed his family. Pierre was 16, Jean was 13, Sophie was 10. They needed food, needed shelter, needed safety. So Fourier made buttons for German uniforms, kept the machines running, met his quotas, never caused problems. The Germans appreciated reliable workers, appreciated men who showed up on time, who kept equipment maintained, who produced quality work without complaint. They trusted him. Fatal mistake. February 1943. A man named Bernard Petit approached Fourier after work. Petit owned a tobacco shop on Rue Fayderbe, small place. Fourier bought cigarettes there occasionally. Petit asked if they could talk privately, walked together to a quiet alley. Petit was direct, said he represented the resistance, said they needed information, troop movements, supply schedules, guard rotations, anything Fourier saw at the factory. German officers talked around the machinists, discussed patrol routes, mentioned supply deliveries. They assumed French workers didn't matter, didn't pay attention. Petit said that assumption was a weakness, said information was a weapon. Asked if Fourier would help. Fourier thought about it for maybe 10 seconds. Thought about German soldiers in his city, German officers in his factory, German flags on French buildings. Said yes. The arrangement was simple. Fourier would observe. Remember? Pass information to Petit twice per week. They'd meet at the tobacco shop. Fourier would buy cigarettes. They'd exchange a few words. Casual conversation. Nothing suspicious. Fourier would mention things. Which German units were moving through Lille. Which roads they used when supply trucks arrived. What they carried. Small details. Individually meaningless. But intelligence work was about patterns, about accumulation. Small details became useful intelligence when combined with other small details. 8 months of careful observation. Fourier worked in the factory, operated his lathe, made uniform buttons, listened to German officers talk. They discussed everything around him. Patrol schedules, supply routes, which roads were secure, which areas had resistance activity. They talked freely because Fourier was just a machinist, just a worker. Didn't matter. Couldn't understand German anyway. Except Fourier understood enough. Picked up words, understood context, remembered everything. Passed information to Petit every Tuesday and Friday. Bought cigarettes. Mentioned what he'd heard. Petit listened. Asked clarifying questions, wrote nothing down, just remembered. The intelligence was useful, helped resistance avoid some patrols, helped plan some ambushes, saved some lives. But didn't solve the fundamental problem. Resistance still outgunned, still dying at 4-to-1 ratios, still losing fighters faster than they could recruit. September 7th, 1943. Petit told Fourier the situation was desperate. Recent operations had failed badly. Casualties mounting. 3 cells lost in August alone. 37 fighters dead. The resistance needed weapons. Needed them desperately. Petit asked, could Fourier steal weapons from the factory? Fourier said no. Factory only made buttons and buckles. No weapons, no ammunition, nothing useful. Petty asked. Could Fourier smuggle weapons from somewhere else? Fourier said no. Germans controlled everything. Every checkpoint, every road, every supply point. Impossible to move weapons without getting caught. Petty looked frustrated, looked desperate, then asked a different question. You're a machinist. You make metal parts all day. What's a gun except metal parts? Fourier started to say guns were complicated, required specialized knowledge, specialized equipment. Then stopped, started thinking. What was a gun? Really? Strip away everything. What components were actually essential? Fourier went home that night thinking about firearms. He'd fired hunting rifles before the war, owned a shotgun, knew basic operation. Point, pull trigger, weapon fires. Simple from a user perspective, but he knew nothing about manufacture, nothing about how firearms were actually built. Spent the next week studying. Borrowed a technical manual from a resistance contact. Former French army armorer. Man had kept his training manuals hidden from Germans. Loaned one to Fourier. Fourier studied it at night. After Marie and the children went to sleep, read by candlelight in the kitchen. The manual explained firearms operation in technical detail. The basic principle was simple. Controlled explosion in a sealed chamber. Explosion generates gas pressure. Pressure propels projectile through barrel. Exit velocity depends on barrel length and pressure levels. Accuracy depends on barrel rifling. Rifling imparts spin. Spin stabilizes projectile. Every firearm followed this basic principle. The complexity came from everything else. Trigger mechanisms with sears, springs, safety levers. Feeding mechanisms with magazines, extractors, ejectors. Sighting systems with adjustable sights, windage, elevation. Barrel rifling with precise spiral grooves cut into barrel interior. All designed for reliability, for accuracy, for sustained fire capability. Fourier studied the diagrams, studied the tolerances, studied the specifications, then started thinking about what the resistance actually needed. They didn't need sustained fire capability, didn't need reliability for thousands of rounds, didn't need accuracy at 200 meters. They fought at close range. 5 meters, 10 meters maximum. Ambush warfare. One burst of fire, then retreat. They needed something crude, something disposable, something that would fire maybe 50 rounds at point-blank range, one time, then could be discarded or rebuilt. Fourier started sketching. Reduced a firearm to absolute minimum components. Started with what was essential. Couldn't be eliminated. Chamber. Needed to hold the cartridge. Firing pin. Needed to strike the primer. Spring. Needed to reset the firing pin. Barrel. Needed to direct the bullet. 4 components. Everything else was unnecessary for close-range disposable use. Trigger mechanism could be simplified. Just a lever that released spring tension. No safety needed. Added complexity. Slowed operation. No sights needed. Point-blank range made them irrelevant. No stock needed. Waste of materials. Added weight. No rifling needed. Couldn't be machined without proper tools anyway. Smooth bore was fine for 10 meters. No magazine needed. Single shot was acceptable. Reload manually between shots. No extractor needed. Pry out spent casing with a screwdriver. Fourier sketched for 3 nights. Refined the design. Made it simpler. Made it cruder. Made it possible. The final design was brutally minimalist. Steel pipe for chamber and barrel. One piece. 30 centimeters long. Inner diameter, 9 millimeters. Matched German ammunition. End cap welded onto rear. Contained the cartridge. Prevented gas escape. Firing pin, sharpened bolt. spring-loaded, struck primer when released. Trigger mechanism, simple lever. Released spring tension. That was it. 4 components. Maybe 8 pieces total, including screws and welds. The weapon violated every principle of gunsmithing. It was ugly. Probably inaccurate beyond 10 meters. Likely to fail after 50 rounds. Barrel stress would cause cracks. Chamber pressure would degrade welds. But it would work. Would work well enough. Would work long enough. September 18th. Fourier showed his sketches to Petit. Met at the tobacco shop. Usual routine. Bought cigarettes. Petit glanced at the sketches. Looked confused initially, then understood. Studied them for 10 minutes. Asked the critical question. Will it actually fire? Fourier said yes. The physics were sound. Chamber contained pressure. Firing pin struck primer. Bullet went forward. Basic firearms operation. Asked, how many rounds before it fails? Fourier estimated 50, maybe less. Barrel had no reinforcement. Stress would cause cracks eventually. Chamber welds would degrade. But 50 rounds could kill 5 Germans at close range. Petit studied the sketches again, asked about materials. Fourier listed them. Steel pipe from plumbing supply, available at any hardware store. Bolt for firing pin. Construction material, common. Spring from door hinge or vehicle suspension, salvageable. Welding equipment, available in any factory. Total material cost, approximately 10 francs. Less than 1 day's wages. Construction time, 4 hours. Most of that welding and fitting the end cap. Petit looked at the sketches for a long time. Finally said, build one. Test it. If it works, we need 200. Fourier said he'd start immediately. Petit said, be careful. Germans executed people for weapon manufacture. Fourier said he understood. Said he'd work at night. Said nobody would know. Petit said, if this works, you'll save hundreds of lives. Fourier said, if this works, it proves weapons don't require factories, just requires understanding what you can eliminate. He started gathering materials that night. September 19th through 23rd, 1943. Fourier worked alone in the factory. Night shifts, 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. One German night watchman, usually drunk by 1 a.m., passed out in the guard shack by 2. Fourier had 5 hours of unobserved time. 5 hours to build something that could get him hanged. He gathered materials over 3 nights. Moved slowly. Nothing obvious. Nothing that would trigger suspicion. First night. Steel pipe from factory scrap pile. 30 centimeters long. 9 millimeter inner diameter. Perfect size for German ammunition. Pipes accumulated in scrap piles constantly. Damaged plumbing from factory bathrooms. Broken hydraulic lines from machinery. Nobody tracked scrap inventory. Nobody cared. Second night. Bolt from maintenance storage. 8 centimeters long. High carbon steel. He filed it to a sharp point. Made a firing pin. Took the bolt from a bin containing hundreds of identical bolts. One missing bolt wouldn't be noticed. Also grabbed a spring. Compression spring from a broken factory door. Strong tension, right size. Third night. Scrap metal pieces for end cap and trigger mechanism. Cut them from sheet metal in the corner of the workshop. Small pieces, easy to hide. By September 22nd, Fourier had everything. Had all components staged in his work area, hidden under legitimate factory materials, ready for assembly. Fourth night, September 23rd, assembly night. Fourier waited until 2 a.m. Confirmed the German watchman was unconscious. Started work. First step, end cap. Cut circular piece from sheet metal, 11 millimeter diameter, slightly larger than pipe interior. He welded it onto the pipe rear. Created sealed chamber. Prevented gas escape backward. The weld had to be perfect. Any gap would cause pressure loss. Could cause catastrophic failure. Could blow the weapon apart. Kill the shooter. Fourier welded carefully. Multiple passes. Built up the weld bead. Tested it visually. Looked solid. Second step, firing pin channel. Drilled hole through end cap center. 8 mm diameter. Fitted the sharpened bolt through. The bolt had to slide smoothly. Had to strike primer with enough force. But couldn't bind. Couldn't stick. Fourier tested the fit. Adjusted tolerances. Filed the hole slightly larger. Bolt moved freely. Third step, spring installation. Installed compression spring around the bolt. Spring provided firing pin force. Strong compression. Maybe 20 pounds of force. Enough to detonate primer. Not enough to damage weapon. Fourth step, trigger mechanism. Fabricated from scrap metal. Simple lever design. Lever held bolt back against spring compression. Pulling lever released bolt. Bolt snapped forward. Struck primer. Weapon fired. The mechanism was crude. No finesse, no precision, just functional. Pull lever, release bolt. That was it. Total construction time, 3 hours, 40 minutes. Fourier cleaned his work area, hid metal shavings in regular factory waste, hid the weapon under his coat. Walked out at 6 a.m. German watchman never noticed. The weapon looked terrible. Rough welds, unfinished metal. No polish, no markings. Weighed approximately 1 kilogram. Length 40 centimeters, including firing mechanism. It looked like plumbing salvage. Like something pulled from a trash heap. Which was accurate. Every component came from scrap or surplus. Nothing new, nothing traceable. Fourier took it home, hid it under floorboards in his basement. Told Marie he was working on a factory project. She didn't ask questions. Didn't want to know. September 24th, test fire day. Fourier took the weapon to an abandoned quarry outside Lille. 3 a.m. No witnesses, no moon. Complete darkness except starlight. He'd stolen one 9mm round the previous week. Taken it from a German guard's ammunition pouch while the guard used the factory bathroom. 1 round. 1 chance to test the weapon. 1 chance to discover if his design worked or exploded in his hands. Fourier loaded the round, slid it into the chamber, closed the end cap. The round fit perfectly. 9mm chamber for 9mm ammunition. He pointed at the quarry wall. 50 meters away, couldn't miss, pulled the trigger lever. The weapon fired. Massive recoil. No stock to absorb it. The pipe slammed back into his shoulder, left a bruise. Loud report. No suppressor. Sound echoed across the quarry. Fourier's ears rang. But the weapon had worked. He walked to the quarry wall, found the impact point. Bullet had hit approximately where he'd aimed, maybe 30 centimeters low. No rifling meant poor accuracy, but at close range that wouldn't matter. He examined the weapon. End caps showed stress cracks, fine lines radiating from the firing pin hole. The welds showed discoloration, heat stress. But the weapon was intact, hadn't exploded, hadn't failed catastrophically. Fourier smiled. It worked. Crude, ugly, dangerous, but functional. October 23rd, 1943. 4:47 a.m. Rue de la République, Lille. Fourier crouched in a doorway, watching 4 German soldiers approach. He'd volunteered for this combat test. Petit had offered to send experienced fighters, men who'd killed before, men who knew combat. Fourier said no. He built it. He'd test it. If the weapon failed and got someone killed, it should be him. Not someone else. Not someone's son or father or brother. The Germans walked closer. 4 Wehrmacht infantry, standard patrol, routine morning sweep. They expected no trouble. Lille had been quiet for 6 weeks. No attacks, no ambushes. The resistance had been inactive, rebuilding after August losses. These soldiers were relaxed, alert but not tense. 2 carried MP-40 submachine guns. 2 carried Kar 98K rifles. All wore combat ribbons. Experienced troops, not garrison soldiers. Combat veterans, 40 meters away, 30 meters, 20 meters. Fourier waited. Let them come closer. Petit was 10 meters behind him, hidden in another doorway. Carried a stolen pistol. Backup if the pipe weapon failed. 2 more resistance fighters across the street, both with knives. Backup for the backup. Everyone knew this was dangerous, knew the weapon might fail, might explode, might not fire at all. But they had to test it, had to know if trash could kill Germans. 15 meters, 10 meters. The lead German soldier was young, maybe 20 years old, talking to his squad mate, laughing about something. Had no idea death was waiting. 5 meters. Fourier stood. Raised the pipe weapon. The Germans saw him, saw the strange weapon, started to raise their MP-40s. Too slow. Fourier pulled the trigger lever. The weapon fired. 9mm round hit the lead German center mass. The soldier fell. Collapsed instantly. Dead before he hit the ground. Fourier worked the firing mechanism. Slide the bolt back manually. Eject spent casing. Casing flew out. Clattered on cobblestones. Chamber new round. Forward motion. Bolt locked. Ready to fire. Took maybe 2 seconds. Felt like hours. Second German was raising his MP-40, getting target acquisition. Fourier fired again. Hit the second German in the chest. Soldier spun, fell. The other 2 Germans dove for cover, behind a parked truck. Started returning fire. MP-40 bursts. Wild, inaccurate, panic fire. Bullets hit building walls, shattered windows. None came close to Fourier. Petit fired his pistol. 2 shots, controlled, accurate. Hit 1 German in the head. Soldier dropped. The last German tried to run, sprinted down the street. The 2 resistance fighters rushed from their position. Caught him after 20 meters. Knives, quick, brutal, efficient. 30 seconds of violence, then silence. 4 German soldiers dead. 3 from Fourier's pipe weapon, 1 from Petit's pistol. 0 resistance casualties. The ambush had worked perfectly. Fourier examined his weapon, still intact. End cap showed more stress cracks, deeper now. Spiderweb pattern around firing pinhole. Barrel was hot, metal still warm from firing. But the weapon worked, had worked perfectly at close range. Point-blank killing, exactly what the resistance needed. The other fighters stared at the pipe weapon. One asked, "What is that thing?" Fourier said, "A solution." They scattered immediately. Standard procedure after ambush. Never stay at the kill site. Germans would respond within minutes. The fighters took the German weapons. 4 MP-40s, 2 Kar 98Ks, approximately 300 rounds of ammunition, major score. Armed 6 fighters. Fourier kept his pipe weapon, hid it under his coat, walked home through back alleys, arrived as sun rose. Marie asked where he'd been. He said early factory shift. She didn't believe him. Saw blood on his hands. Said nothing. Didn't want to know. Some things were better unknown. German response came fast. By noon October 23rd, Wehrmacht had deployed extra patrols. 40 soldiers searching Lille, going door to door, demanding identification, searching for the attackers. Found nothing. The resistance had vanished, gone underground. Standard procedure, strike and disappear. Germans recovered the spent casings. 3 9mm rounds, German military issue, but no other evidence. No eyewitnesses. Dawn attack on empty street. Nobody saw anything. Nobody heard anything. Everyone claimed ignorance. Germans couldn't identify the attackers, couldn't find the weapons, Couldn't locate the resistance cell. German investigation report filed October 25th. Fourier saw it years later. Captured after liberation, now in French National Archives. Report stated, 4 soldiers killed in ambush. Attackers used 9mm ammunition, unknown weapons. Casings show unusual rifling marks. The rifling marks weren't unusual. They were non-existent. Smooth-bore barrel left no rifling signature, no lands and grooves, no identifying characteristics. German investigators were confused. Every firearm left a unique rifling signature. Ballistics identification depended on it. But these casings showed nothing. Completely smooth bullet surfaces. Germans assumed captured ammunition in modified Allied weapons. Never suspected improvised manufacture. Never imagined French machinists building functional firearms from plumbing supplies. The assumption was fatal. Gave Fourier freedom to continue production. Resistance commanders studied Fourier's weapon, disassembled it carefully, examined every component, measured tolerances, tested the firing mechanism, asked the critical questions. Can you make more? Fourier said yes, as many as needed. How fast? 4 hours per weapon. Maybe less with practice. How many before Germans notice? Dozens, maybe hundreds if we're careful. Materials are common. Construction is simple. Nothing sophisticated, nothing traceable. Resistance leadership made a decision. Ordered Fourier to produce 12 weapons immediately. Wanted to equip 1 full cell for field testing. 12 weapons, 12 fighters, 1 coordinated operation. See if the pipe weapons worked consistently. See if they were reliable. See if crude functionality beat sophisticated unavailability. Fourier started manufacturing that night, October 24th through November 8th, 15 days. Built 14 weapons, 12 operational, 2 test failures. Worked night shifts at the factory. Gathered materials slowly, 1 piece of pipe per night. Bolts and springs from different storage areas. Never took too much from one location. Never triggered suspicion. Factory inventory control was sloppy. German supervisors were incompetent, most drunk by afternoon. Didn't track materials carefully. Didn't notice missing scrap metal. Fourier built weapons 1 at a time, each slightly different. Learning, improving, refining. Second weapon, reinforced end cap, double welds. Lasted 80 rounds instead of 50. Third weapon, improved trigger mechanism, smoother operation, easier to pull. Fourth weapon, better grip. Welded metal handle, reduced recoil impact. By weapon 12, construction time dropped to 2 hours 40 minutes, less than 3 hours per weapon. Quality improved significantly. Still crude, still ugly, but more functional, more reliable, more effective. November 9th. 12 resistance fighters received weapons. Cell operating in Roubaix, 15 kilometers from Lille. Cell leader, Georges Marchand, former French Army sergeant. Combat experienced. North Africa campaign. New infantry tactics. New ambush operations. Knew how to kill efficiently. Marchand tested the weapons November 10th. Planned ambush on German supply truck. Intelligence indicated truck carried ammunition and rations. 6 Germans guarding it. Standard escort. Marchand had 12 fighters, 12 pipe weapons, 2-to-1 numerical advantage. Ambush site. Narrow street in industrial district. Buildings on both sides. Single escape route. Germans would be trapped. Attack came at dawn. 6:15 a.m. German truck entered the kill zone. Marchand's fighters opened fire from both sides. Simultaneous, coordinated, devastating. 12 weapons firing at once. Point-blank range, maybe 8 meters. The Germans never had a chance. All 6 dead within 90 seconds. Some tried to return fire, failed. Too much incoming fire, too much confusion. 0 resistance casualties, perfect execution. Marchand's report to Resistance Command. Weapons work. Effective range approximately 10 meters. Accuracy poor beyond that. But for close ambush operations, adequate. Request 20 more immediately. Word spread through Resistance network. Other cells wanted the weapons, wanted them desperately. Finally had something that worked. Something they could manufacture. Something that didn't depend on British airdrops. Petty approached Fourier November 11th. Said, "We need 200 weapons. Can you deliver?" Fourier did mathematics. 200 weapons at 3 hours each. 600 hours total. 600 hours at 5 hours per night. 120 nights. 4 months of continuous production. Assuming Germans didn't notice. Assuming he didn't get caught. Fourier said, "I'll need help." November 1943 through March 1944. Fourier recruited 2 additional machinists. Couldn't produce 200 weapons alone. Needed help. Needed men he could trust. Men with machining skills. Men willing to risk execution. First recruit, Louis Blanc. Factory co-worker, age 38. Operated milling machines on the day shift. Fourier had worked with him for 12 years. Knew he hated the Germans. Knew his brother had been executed in '42 for resistance activity. Blanc agreed immediately. Said, "Tell me what to build." Second recruit, Henri Martin. Former automotive mechanic, age 45. Worked evening shift maintaining factory equipment. Skilled with lathes and welding. Lost his son at Dunkirk in 1940. Wanted revenge. Said, "I'll build 1,000 if it kills Germans." Fourier taught them the design. Showed them the techniques. Explained the timing. How to gather materials without triggering suspicion. How to build weapons without leaving evidence. How to test quality without test firing. Each could build 1 weapon per night. 3 machinists working simultaneously. 3 weapons per night. 4 months of production. Approximately 360 weapons. Enough to arm multiple resistance cells across northern France. The production system was elegant in its simplicity. Blanc worked day shift. Gathered materials, pulled scrap metal from waste bins, took bolts and springs from storage, staged everything in hidden locations. Martin worked evening shift, moved materials to final staging areas, prepared workstations, set up welding equipment. Fourier worked night shift, assembled weapons, 3 hours per weapon, 9 hours per night, 3 weapons completed, hidden under floorboards, under machinery, behind wall panels. Germans never noticed. Factory production records showed normal scrap waste. Inventory levels appeared correct. Blanc manipulated the paperwork, added false entries, adjusted scrap calculations, made everything balance. Security patrols never checked maintenance areas thoroughly, never suspected weapon manufacture in a button factory. The weapons spread across northern France, resistance cells in Lille, Roubaix, Tourcoing, Valenciennes, 40 cells equipped by January 1944. 100 cells by February. Each cell received 6 to 8 weapons. Each weapon came with basic instructions. Effective range, 10 meters maximum. Fire single shots. Reload manually. Expect mechanical failure after 50 rounds. Discard and request replacement. The mathematics started changing. September through October, 1943. Casualty ratio 4, resistance fighters per German soldier. November through December, ratio dropped to 2 to 1. January through February 1944, nearly 1 to 1. The improvement wasn't just about weapons. It was about psychology. Fighters who'd operated with knives now had guns, had firearms that could kill at distance, didn't have to close to arm's length, didn't have to risk hand-to-hand combat. Could engage from 8 meters, 10 meters, could shoot and retreat. Morale increased dramatically. Recruitment increased. New fighters joined because cells had weapons, had equipment, had actual capability to hurt Germans. Operation tempo increased. More ambushes, more raids, more attacks. By February 1944, Northern France resistance conducted approximately 60 operations per month. Up from 20 per month in September, triple the activity, triple the German casualties, all from weapons built from trash. German intelligence noticed the pattern, couldn't ignore it. January 1944, Wehrmacht intelligence report, filed January 28th, captured in 1945, now stored in U.S. National Archives. Report stated, significant increase in terrorist attacks across northern France. Attackers using unknown weapons. Ballistics indicate 9mm ammunition. No identifiable weapon signature. Rifling analysis inconclusive. Recommend increased security measures. February 1944. Germans deployed additional forces. 2 companies of infantry, approximately 400 soldiers, sent specifically for counter-resistance operations. Increased patrols, increased checkpoints, increased searches, random house raids, document checks, curfew enforcement. Germans executed suspected resistance members publicly, hanged them in town squares, shot them in streets, displayed bodies as warnings. February 18th, 3 men executed in Lille. Suspected resistance fighters. No trial, no evidence, just suspicion. Germans were desperate, frustrated, couldn't stop the attacks, couldn't identify the weapons, couldn't locate the source. German investigation focused on British SOE airdrops. Assumed weapons were Allied supplied. Never suspected local manufacture. Never imagined French workers building functional firearms in occupied factories. The assumption was institutionally embedded. Germans believed weapon manufacture required sophisticated facilities, required gunsmiths, required precision equipment. Couldn't accept that plumbing supplies could become lethal weapons. Germans captured 2 pipe weapons in February ambushes. Found them at attack sites after resistance retreated. Sent them to Wehrmacht Technical Intelligence in Paris. Analysis report filed February 29th. Captured post-war. Now in German Federal Archives. Report stated, improvised weapons manufactured from commercial materials. Steel pipe barrel. Crude firing mechanism. No serial numbers, no manufacturer marks, no identifying characteristics. Origin unknown. Production method unknown. Distribution network unknown. Quality assessment. Crude but functional. Effective range estimated 10 meters. Reliability questionable. Recommend continued investigation. The report missed the critical point. The weapons were crude by design. Crudeness was intentional. Was necessary. Sophisticated weapons required sophisticated manufacturing. Crude weapons required nothing except basic machining skills and scrap metal. Germans couldn't comprehend the scale. Couldn't comprehend that hundreds of these weapons existed. Couldn't comprehend that more were being manufactured every night in a factory that made Wehrmacht uniform buttons. March 8th, 1944. Germans raided suspected resistance workshop in Roubaix. Intelligence indicated weapon manufacture occurring there. 40 soldiers surrounded the building, broke down doors, searched every room, found nothing. Wrong location, bad intelligence. Fourier's factory was never suspected. He maintained perfect cover, showed up for work every day, operated his machines, made buttons for German uniforms, met production quotas, never caused problems. Germans trusted him completely. Fatal mistake. The Germans should have searched every factory, every workshop, every facility with machining equipment. But that would have required shutting down military production, would have disrupted uniform manufacturing, equipment repair, supply operations. Germans needed these factories operating, needed buttons and buckles and mess kits. Chose production over security. Wrong choice. Fourier built weapons for 4 months before using one in combat again. First combat test, October 23rd. Killed 3 Germans, then focused on production. Let other fighters do the killing. But March through August 1944, Fourier participated in 17 combat operations, all with pipe weapons he'd built himself. Claimed 17 confirmed kills. Resistance records verify 15 confirmed. 2 probable. His technique was consistent, methodical, clinical, close-range ambushes, 5 to 10 meters maximum engagement distance. Never exceeded weapon capability, never took unnecessary risks. Aimed center mass, torso shots, largest target area. Poor accuracy required margin for error, fired 2 or 3 rounds per target, ensured effect. Single shots weren't reliable with crude weapons. Never attempted shots beyond 15 meters. Weapon was ineffective at distance. March 19, 1944. 2 Germans killed. Rue Nationale, Lille. Dawn ambush. German patrol. 4 soldiers, Fourier and 3 other fighters. Simultaneous fire. 2 Germans dead instantly. Other 2 fled. April 2nd. 3 Germans killed. Near Lille train station, German logistics personnel. Loading supplies. Vulnerable. Fourier's cell attacked. 3 Germans dead. Captured supplies included 80 rounds of 9mm ammunition. Armed entire cell for 2 weeks. April 27th. 1 German killed. Patrol ambush. Rural road outside Lille. Single shot. Center mass. German fell. Cell retreated immediately. May 15th. 2 Germans killed. Supply depot attack. 10 fighters. Multiple targets. Fourier engaged 2 soldiers. Both center mass hits. Both fatal. June 6th. D-Day. Fourier listened to BBC broadcasts. Knew invasion had started. Knew liberation was coming. Germans knew it too. Started preparing retreat operations. June 7th. 3 Germans killed. Wehrmacht retreat convoy. Trucks moving south. Fourier's cell ambushed lead vehicle. 3 soldiers dead. Convoy delayed 6 hours. July 11th. 2 Germans killed. Standard patrol. Routine operation. August 3rd. 1 German killed. German officer. Walking alone. Foolish. Fatal mistake. August 24th. 3 Germans killed. Final combat action. German rear guard. Covering retreat. Fourier's cell attacked. 3 dead. Germans fled. Total, 17 Germans killed. All with weapons Fourier built himself. Each engagement was calculated. Each shot was deliberate. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. Fourier approached combat like machining. Measure twice. Cut once. Plan carefully. Execute perfectly. Retreat immediately. September 3rd, 1944. Allied forces liberated Lille. British and Canadian troops entered the city. Tanks rolling through streets. Infantry clearing buildings. German occupation forces retreated. Moved east toward Germany. Some surrendered. Raised white flags. Became prisoners. Fourier's factory, abandoned by Germans. Reclaimed by French workers. The machines that made Wehrmacht buttons would make textile equipment again. Total weapons manufactured by Fourier's production cell. 437. Resistance records documented every weapon. Tracked distribution, tracked usage. Total resistance operations using pipe weapons. 87 documented. Probably more undocumented. Total German casualties from pipe weapon attacks, 142 killed. Estimated 200 wounded. Casualty ratio after pipe weapon deployment. Resistance losses dropped from 4 to 1 to 1.1 to 1. Nearly even. Statistical analysis conducted by French military historians in 1953. Comprehensive study of resistance effectiveness. Study concluded, Pipe weapons accounted for approximately 22% of German casualties inflicted by northern France resistance. 22% from weapons that cost essentially nothing to manufacture. From materials available in any hardware store, from trash and scrap metal and plumber's supplies. October 1944. Allied intelligence officers interviewed Fourier, examined his weapons, documented the design, photographed examples, tested functionality. American OSS report stated, crudest functional firearm documented. Effective only at point-blank range. Reliability questionable, accuracy poor. But successfully armed several hundred resistance fighters who otherwise would have operated unarmed. Strategic impact significant. British SOE assessment stated, improvised weapons manufactured by French machinists demonstrate that lack of conventional arms supply need not prevent resistance operations. Recommend study for application in other occupied territories. Marcel Fourier returned to civilian life, September 19, 1944. Returned to his factory, same machines, same work. Now making textile equipment again. No more Wehrmacht buttons, no more German officers. Just normal factory work. Normal French factory. Worked as machinist until retirement in 1966. 22 more years operating lathes. Marie lived until 1973. They had 49 years together. 3 children, 8 grandchildren. Normal life after abnormal war. French government awarded medals after liberation. Every verified resistance member received recognition. Fourier received Médaille de la Résistance in 1946. Standard Award, certificate and medal. No special recognition. No mention of weapon design. No acknowledgement of 437 firearms manufactured. No mention of 87 combat operations enabled. Official French military history mentioned resistance weapons scarcity. Mentioned British SOE airdrops. Never mentioned Fourier. Never mentioned pipe weapons. Never mentioned that a machinist in Lille had solved the weapons problem with trash and determination. Fourier never sought recognition. Never talked about the weapons. When neighbors asked about his war service, he said, "I was in the resistance." Nothing more. When journalists tracked him down in the 1960s, he declined interviews. Said, "I made tubes that fired bullets. Nothing sophisticated." When asked about his 17 kills, he said, "I did what was necessary." Lived quietly in Lille until death in 1987. Age 86. Obituary in local newspaper. 2 paragraphs. Mentioned resistance service in 1 sentence. Didn't mention weapons. Didn't mention 437 firearms. Didn't mention casualty ratio improvements. Didn't mention 200 resistance lives saved. Fourier's pipe weapon design influenced post-war improvised weapons development. U.S. military studied it. CIA manufactured similar weapons during Cold War. Distributed them to resistance movements in Soviet-occupied territories. Deer gun in Vietnam War. Simplified single-shot pistol. Same basic principle. Chamber, firing pin, spring. CIA distributed thousands. Liberator pistol in World War II. American mass-produced version. More sophisticated, but same concept. Single shot, disposable, cheap. Fourier's design was cruder than military equivalents, but proved the concept worked. Proved desperate fighters could manufacture functional weapons from hardware store materials. Modern insurgent groups still use variations. Pipe guns appear in conflicts worldwide. Same materials, same limitations, same advantage. Can't confiscate what can be manufactured continuously. The mathematical principle remains valid. Crude weapon beats no weapon. Numerous crude weapons beat few sophisticated weapons. Replaceable weapons beat irreplaceable weapons. When the enemy controls conventional supply chains, improvisation becomes necessity. Necessity becomes innovation. Innovation becomes doctrine. Marcel Fourier never claimed to be a hero, never claimed his weapons were sophisticated, never claimed he'd revolutionized warfare. He was a machinist who solved a problem. The problem: 2,000 fighters, 300 weapons. The solution: build more weapons from trash. 17 Germans died because Fourier understood that a firearm isn't a sophisticated machine. It's a tube that makes bullets go forward. Everything else is luxury. When you're fighting with knives against machine guns, luxury is irrelevant. 437 tubes, 437 weapons that shouldn't have existed, manufactured in a factory that made Wehrmacht buttons, by a machinist the Germans trusted, who armed a resistance movement with plumbing supplies and determination, who proved that innovation doesn't require genius. Sometimes innovation just requires desperation and the willingness to discard everything conventional wisdom calls essential. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more forgotten stories from World War II. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. These men and women risked everything. They deserve to be remembered. Thank you for watching. Thank you for keeping Marcel Fourier's memory alive.